Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Urbex Dead Mall series and the Iowa road trip. Today's episode brings us to the Lindale Mall here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Now this was a cool mall, both aesthetically and for the fact that it has a small basement section. Actually, I think it has two basement sections now that I'm thinking about it. This mall also has a really cool retro neon food court sign that we'll get to take a look at later on in the video. Now, as I was walking around this mall, I kept thinking to myself, man, this should just be a two-level mall. It just has two-level mall vibes, and although it technically is a two-level mall with those basements I mentioned earlier, I was thinking more of the traditional two-level mall, where it has a first and a second level that mirror each other. Anyway, here's a brief history of the Lindale Mall. The very first remnants of the Lindale Mall would begin on February 15th of 1956, when Sears and Yonkers would announce plans for a new open-air shopping center in northeast Cedar Rapids. With this news, all the merchants in downtown Cedar Rapids would form an organization to oppose the rezoning of the land from residential to commercial use. This was because they were afraid that the new development would take business away from downtown, and they were probably pretty accurate about that. Eventually, the rezoning would be approved by the Cedar Rapids City Council, and construction on the Lindale Plaza would begin. The plaza would finally open on September 15th of 1960, with a Sears, Yonkers, and Killian's, a local department store. These would be the original anchors of the Lindale Plaza and eventually the Lindale Mall, with the Sears relocating from its downtown Cedar Rapids location. Some of the other early tenants would include a Kresge's, Eagle Supermarket, and a Bishop's Buffet, which would close in early September of 2003. The Sears and the Yonkers stores were the only two original tenants to make it into the new millennium, but unfortunately, the Sears couldn't make it past the pandemic, as it would be announced that it would be closing down in April of 2018, along with many other Sears throughout the country. It was also that very same month and year that the Yonkers store would announce it would be closing, as well as the parent company Bon-Ton stores would be filing for bankruptcy and going out of business. Now that's something you don't see every day. Two major anchor tenants closing down simultaneously. I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. Heading into the 1980s, the mall scene throughout the country was booming, and it was no different here in Cedar Rapids and throughout the state of Iowa. And so it was in 1980 that the Lindale Plaza would become enclosed and renamed to the Lindale Mall. As we race through the 1980s, 90s, and into the new millennium, we would begin to see stores come and go from the mall. The first one would be in 1981, when the Killian's chain would go bankrupt and be replaced by the Peterson Hahn Von Maur, also known as Von Maur. The first renovation to the mall would come in August of 1997 for a whopping $15 million, an expansion and renovation project that would include construction of a new 500-stall parking ramp and a new 500-seat food court. All right, we're going to finally head down to the first of the two basements, and this was absolutely awesome because you could definitely tell they hadn't done a whole lot of renovations to this section of the mall, and I love it. It was really special hitting the bottom of these stairs and seeing what I believe is probably some of the original tile work. Now, having grown up in the Detroit area with all of their original malls, we had quite a few of them that had these weird basement areas just like this, and they usually had odds and ends stuff like the shoe repair, or the tailor, or post office, or whatever, and it kind of looks like this basement area was very similar to that. I was kind of disappointed that the amazing original tile work disappeared and this newer tile showed up, and I was just like, oh, why do they have it mixed? You can see where the old and the new start, and I don't really care for that, but still, amazing to see some of the original tile of the mall. Now that we've checked out this rather small basement area, we're going to head back upstairs and continue the history on the Lindale Mall. So here we are in 2021. The current owner of the mall was the Washington Prime Group. Yep, an investment group. And if you've been following this channel for quite some time, you know how I feel about investment groups or investment companies. They're all the same. They're all scummy. They're just here to basically make a quick buck and drain all the assets out of whatever business they own, whether it's a mall or a restaurant or a store. And unfortunately, things for the mall really aren't improving because in 2023, Kohan Retail, yep, another investment group, had acquired the mall for $28.5 million. And of course, it's Kohan, and you know they won't invest anything into this mall. They're just going to drain it of all of its assets just to make a quick buck and then move on to the next property. Now, I'd love for someone to prove me wrong. I'd love for Kohan to come back swinging, actually invest in this property and invest in the community by doing upgrades, getting in new stores, whatever it takes to make this property flourish. And in doing so, they'll actually benefit from it because in the long run, they'll make more money than they would just letting the property go to waste and making a quick buck. And it would also, of course, benefit the community. But unfortunately, only time will tell, and I don't really have high hopes for this mall in the long term. As of 2025, plans have been approved to construct a Dick's House of Sports in the former Sears location. And this brings us up to current times and concludes the history of the Lindale Mall. So here are my final thoughts on this mall. I loved the architecture, and the basements were really cool to see, especially with that old tile down there and just kind of seeing what it used to look like. It's a very nice mall, although it is missing quite a few stores and it is struggling. But I do hope that its future is bright and that this mall doesn't close down soon because Cedar Rapids does need a mall. In fact, there's really not a lot of malls left in Iowa because they've been disappearing left and right lately. I will make one last comment. Von Maur, they're expensive. Iowa seems to be like a depressed state, and especially looking at the economic numbers. Okay? So how exactly is Von Maur surviving, but things like Macy's, Sears, J.C. Penney, they're all closing down? I mean, I know why Sears is closing down because as a whole they're not doing well, but like they're losing things like Penny's, which is their budget option. I just don't get it. Alright, so here we are. We're about to go into the second basement that this mall has. Now, when I was down here, I kept expecting it to connect to the first basement that we already took a look at, but it just never did. And I don't believe that it ever did. And if it did, well, that was a long time ago. But this basement's very similar to the first basement we took a look at, where it just has some random government-type offices like DMV, post office, alterations, that kind of stuff. Nothing that you would really frequent all that often. So they kind of just shove it off into the basement. Though I don't think I've ever been into a basement area that has escalators that I can think of. No, I think Eastland in Michigan, now that I remember, had escalators in it. But man, if this didn't have the carpeting in it, wow, is this like a time warp. I love the brick columns and the wooden seats around the bottom of the brick columns. That's awesome. Well, there's not really all that much to see down here in this basement, so I think we're going to head back upstairs and finish the tour of the mall. Well, everyone, that's going to do it for our tour here of the Lindale Mall here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. If you're enjoying this kind of content, please consider becoming a member either here on YouTube or over on my Patreon. Every little bit goes to help me produce these videos and to travel to these different locations. For everyone that's a part of the Tilt Squad and is a member and contributing, thank you so much. Without your support, these videos wouldn't be possible. New content comes out weekly, so like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.